Greetings, GTS retail partners, and welcome to the latest installment of our retailer webinar series. I'm Scott Bohr, your category manager for gaming specialty products, which includes game accessories, miniatures, and role-playing games. So some really great product launches coming up from our friends over at WizKids related to the most recent announcements from Wizards of the Coast on their Dungeons and Dragons product lines, as well as the introduction of Spelljammer, the new space fantasy series coming out from Wizards of the Coast and supported quite naturally by WizKids and their Icons of the Realm product launches, as well as the new Onslaught tactical miniatures game. So you've got a skirmish level game that is specifically designed to support retail sales, not only of the gaming product, but also of the miniatures you're already carrying from WizKids. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in and discuss initial launches for Spelljammer, as well as some of the other upcoming products from WizKids with Patrick O'Hagan. Patrick, take it away.
Hey everyone, my name is Patrick O'Hagan. I'm the executive producer for RPGs at WizKids. Happy to spend some time with you talking about some of the kind of upcoming releases we have in the latter part of 22. First and foremost, Wizards of the Coast announced Spelljammer coming out in August. I'm happy to say, of course, we have a miniature set that goes along with this in fall. And I'm going to walk you through all the really cool things we have coming out for Spelljammers. First and foremost, the Spelljammer set will be a huge booster, very similar to what we've been releasing over the last couple years. We've really gone to include a lot of huge minis as well as large minis in our newer sets, probably the last 3 years worth of sets. So each booster will contain one or huge or large and or 5 medium or small. The MSRP remains the same at $20 or $19.99. And let me spend some time with you just talking about what's going to be in them. Not surprisingly, the one booster comes and we sell it in the brick format, or 8 boosters. For MSRP of $159. And we do expect these to come out in October. And again, super excited to talk about what that is. Let me just talk about a little bit about what Spelljammer is. I'm not going to give any secret sauce because I'll let Wizards of the Coast do that. But if you think about what is Spelljammer, well, it is D&D in space. It is not any different than the D&D you would play that, for instance, came out with Wild Beyond the Witchlight, or the Dragon Heist, Waterdeep Dragon Heist, or any other kind of big set that Wizards of the Coast has released with D&D. What happens is that players work in and around asteroids and planetoids and planets and habitable spaces. I think the easiest way to describe this is the world that we all love, the Expanse. Now, again, Expanse is a series of books that has nothing to do with D&D, but if you've watched Expanse, and the TV series Expanse, then you'll know what I'm talking about, where people are on ships, they land on asteroids and comets and planets, they do adventures, they involve and engage in different things, but it's the D&D we all know and love. It is no different. There will, of course, be rules of how you slip in and out of space, but I won't go into any of that detail. They have additional races, and I'm going to talk about some of the kind of miniatures we have with some of the races that Wizards of the Coast have announced. So there's new races and playable characters. There's just a lot of new stuff coming out, but it just fits right into the D&D space that you know and love. The other thing I'm going to talk about is why Spelljammer and what makes the set that we're coming out with unique. And I'll go into that because a lot of this stuff can be played in Spelljammer or on any planet or in any campaign. It's not just Spelljammer focused. So let's just look at a few. First and foremost, we're really excited that they introduced an auto gnome. And so what you have here is a gnome character that is mechanical. And you can kind of just see what that looks like and just the coolness of that. Another thing, who doesn't like a giant space hamster, right? So again, space hamsters are fun. This is a giant one. You can see it's on a lead by a little halfling, but it's just, you can see, this is a cool mini. Can you use this in space? Yes. Can you use this not in space? 100%. Look at this little beholderkin. It looks like an asteroid on one side. On the other side, it will gobble up you and parts of your ship, right? So it's an eyemonger. It's really cool. It's really fun, right? So again, it just goes back to this. I think one of the things you'll see in this set is just D&D having a lot of fun, and it's a really cool. WotC announced recently that the 3-book series that's coming out in August is going to be, one book is going to be, like how and what the rules are for Spelljammer and basically adventures in space. Another book will be monsters that you would engage in space, and the third rule book will be an adventure series. And so what this set does is it contains elements from all of those, plus, like I said, elements from lots of other things that you can do. One of the first playable races that they're reintroducing, because if you're familiar with Star Frontiers, this was in Star Frontiers way back in the day, is a plasmoid. And a plasmoid is exactly what it looks like, kind of an amoeba-like bipedal creature who can walk around and talk and engage. It's really cool. You can see the mini. It's shot in clear plastic, but it's just, again, part of the set, really, really going to be fantastic. Another thing that is introduced or reintroduced is solar dragons. Solar dragons emit lights of beams and almost like photon torpedoes. I'm not going to give you any more information than that, but they're really cool. This is one of the rares in the set, and actually it looks just amazing. The wings glimmer and shimmer with iridescent paint, as well as other kind of effects that we have on the dragon. This is part of the NPC, so I'm not going to give it away. But this is kind of, this reminds me of a TV show we watched in the 80s or in the 70s. And one thing that, if you look at the kind of stylized version of this, the stylized version of this should harken on to like the 80s and a lot of the kind of glam kind of space operas of the 80s that we remember and love. Here is one of the kind of, we have part of the adventure has a new race of elves called the Astral Elves. I won't give anything away other than the fact that they all, for fashion, wear helmets. You can see it with helmet and without helmet, but you can just kind of see the Astral Elves are a different type of elf, and I will leave it at that. But here is just one of the Astral Elves in the actual set. Another part of spelljamming is, of course, gifts. And so this is a gift shock trooper. So you can kind of see it has grenades, it has a gun in the back, it has full plate armor, it's ready for battle, right? And so you can kind of just see what this looks like. And a GIF is a hippopotamus kind of humanoid type creature. These already exist, but now you can play them as a playable race as part of D&D. Not surprisingly, there are menaces in space. This is a void scaver, which is a large miniature, but you can kind of just see how menacing it looks like. I wouldn't want to fight this in space or in the water. But again, these are just some of the kind of select minis that we have in the set. Part of the kind of, I would say, premiums that we have that are sold along with the actual booster is first and foremost one of the most biggest menaces in the astral plane, which is the Astral Dreadnought, or in Spelljammer is the Astral Dreadnought. This is massive. You can kind of see in different images and sizes, and then you can see it's about 8 by 16 inches, quite large. It is one of the I would say iconic monsters in D&D. And we're super excited to kind of bring it to life and bring it to the same size. Like I said, it's the 16 by 8 inches. This comes out with the actual boosters, and it's just going to be an amazing kind of menacing effect and set. The next premium will be kind of like a gargantuan mini. So it's basically kind of like, it's not a gargantuan, it's an adult solar dragon. But it also comes with one of the key characters in the actually adventure. And I'll show you what is cool about it. The actual character has an ability to ride the specific solar dragon and not, if you think about it. So basically, if you look at it, it comes apart. We've done a lot of these things most recently with our miniature lines, and they basically come apart, and that you can actually have it, but with it's just a dragon and the actual NPC, or you can actually have it riding its solar dragon. You can see the name here is Prince Zaleth. I won't tell you any more about that because that's part of the adventure. But you can just see a close-up of this. But again, those are the kind of two premiums we have with the set, as well as some of the kind of key miniatures in the booster. Do you have any questions, Scott, about Spelljammer or anything else to do with Spelljammer?
Yeah, one of the questions I have for you is how many minis are in the booster collection?
Sure. There
Like
are
over the whole canon.
45 minis in the actual booster set, and then a number of promos, and I'm just getting to actually one of the promos, and then the two premiums give you another, I would say 3. So 48 altogether.
Awesome. Perfect.
Yeah. Not surprisingly, you're going to like this, is the retailer exclusive. And you've seen these retailer exclusives. They're very popular with retailers. But the retailer exclusives for that are coming out with the Spelljammer set are the Space Clowns. And you may think, what? But yes, this is a notorious group of people who ravage the astral and other seas. But again, you can kind of see we're very happy to have the Space Clowns as the set premium. Sorry, not the set premium, but the promo that is only available in retail. So these will be available with the actual booster set. And depending on, and Scott, I think you have rules on how you stores get these. We don't establish the rules, but I know you maybe be able to explain to the retailers how they get these promos.
Yeah, the promos are listed as a 1 per case. So if you buy a case of the booster bricks,
yep,
you will get the promo for as a free add-on.
Cool. Great. Thanks, Scott.
And then Patrick, I think it's also worth mentioning that the giant space hamster that we looked at a couple minutes ago will also be the subject of a paint kit.
Yeah,
that will not have it won't have an event period. It'll just be a for sale SKU from launch.
Oh,
100%.
Cool. We haven't seen that one come through yet.
Yeah, no, it hasn't. So it should. So the solicit on that should be coming through. I'll talk to my team about where the solicit is. But so part of what we're
Awesome.
doing with Wizards of the, what's that? Oh, sorry. Part of what we're doing with Wizards of the Coast's big releases, like Spelljammer, like Wild Beyond the Witchlight, is we're coming out with a kind of retail focused paint kit. And that retail focused paint kit will be the giant space hamster without the handler. And so that'll come with, just like we have in the past, paintbrush, 2 paintbrushes, all the paints you need, an instruction video, right? And the space hamster unpainted. And that'll be coming out hopefully a couple months after the actual set, a couple months after the book comes out in August. And we're super excited to have that come out. But yeah, thanks for commenting on that, Will. For sure, the Space Hamster is the paint kit. And remember, that can be an OP program, but it's not meant to be on our side. It's really meant to be just kind of on the shelf purchasing like you would a paint kit, right? It'll have everything you need, and it'll be at an MSRP. More than likely, we're targeting $20. Any questions about the kind of general booster promo or premiums that we have for the set?
I think the program's pretty clear.
Yeah,
you know, like you said, the paint night kit, the intent is to hold in-store events so that you can bring people into the store, get them familiar with the product line, get them excited about the process of painting, as well as the world that's being created by the Spelljammer series, which is a pretty excellent throwback to classic D&D. So there's a broader range of people who are going to be interested in Spelljammer than might normally be interested just in Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, that's a good call out, Scott. I think if you're familiar with Spelljammer, then it came out as part of 2nd edition. It was a big release of 2nd edition with many products and many releases. This also incorporates some elements of Star Frontiers, which I believe was not even a 2nd edition, it was 1st edition. But again, it goes back to, it culminates and collects a lot of the different D&D and adventures in space kind of attitudes and behaviors that are really kind of cool and exciting. Speaking of cool and exciting things, what we came up with a solution of is that in effect, Spelljammer miniatures are at 32, the 28 millimeter scale, which is the kind of RPG scale of miniatures. However, there's going to be things that are going to be very large. And when I say, again, the Astro Dreadnought is very large, don't get me wrong. So that's going to be, of course, something we sell. but there's a lot of ships and people fly around in space on ships. And a lot of them, some of them, the Nautiloid is something that I think has been very, very, very known, given Baldur's Gate 3 and just what a Nautiloid is with the mind flayers attacking. But what we decided to do was build an entire range of a new scale of miniatures, which we're calling ship scale. Now, they're not just all ships, and I'll get into some of the monsters that we're going to be doing, but they're basically a 1 to 600 scale. So they're at a much different size and scope of than the 32 millimeter, right? So the RPG scale will be different than this one because this is 1 to 600, right? And so if you think about it, what we've done is we've kept the same base sizes. So you can see here the Night Spider, that's going to be on a huge base, which is it's one of the biggest ships, whereas the Flying Fish is on a 20 millimeter base, because that's one of the smallest ships. Now, this is not the scale, but you'll see them in scale by us very soon on some solicits. But what we're coming out with is a series of box sets, and these series of box sets will contain anywhere between 1 and 5 ships. 4 to 5 ships. It won't have just one. But you can see kind of here's Wild Space Ambush, which has the Neogi ship, which is the Night Spiders. It has the Mind Flayer Nautiloid and an asteroid. But there's some additional SKUs, like ones you can see here on the Swarm of Murder Comets or the Threats from the Cosmos. You'll have an Ancient Red Dragon. So what we're doing is we're scaling down some of the kind of gargantuan sized miniatures to fit into the actual space. So they scale and size of some of these ships. And so that you'll be able to play, think of this, and the way we've been talking about kind of ship scale is think of this kind of at a macro scale. Is I'll have a battle mat, and I'll show you a battle mat that we'll have for both Wild Space and some of the other elements. But you'll be able to if you think about playing on a ship, like, let me go back to, if you're on the Flying Fish, you can kind of see the deck and some of the other boards, but it's a small kind of schooner almost, right? You'll be able to actually have the detail of the kind of battle mat for the Flying Fish, but you also be able to put it on a battle mat with other ships that you're potentially in combat with, or other monsters or elements or asteroids, or the beholder can I showed you before. So you're going to be able to actually have kind of 2 scales. One is going to be a more macro scale, and the other is going to be more of a kind of normal miniature scale, or the RPG scale. And so this is going to be pretty exciting. One of the things that we're going to do, and I'll show you, let me just go through some of the minis, and I'll talk about how we're going to actually start helping you understand this to your consumers and resellers. So here's one for the Astral Elf Patrol, which will have the Star Moth, which is the Astral Elf's kind of main ship of the line. You'll have an Ancient Solar Dragon, Ancient Lunar Dragon. You'll have the Damselfly, which is a little small one. But then you have Attacks from Deep Space. And so you're going to be able to actually get the Astral Dreadnought in an 8-inch by 16-inch size. But you're also going to be able to get it in a 2x3 size. And so what we're going to do is we're going to actually put the ship scale minis next to their actual kind of RPG scale minis. So you'll see the difference in actually comparison. So the Astral Dreadnought is going to be very, very large, the RPG scale. The ship scale is going to be smaller, but you're going to be able to do that and see that. We actually will do the same thing with the Ancient Red Dragon. And we have a number of other examples where we can actually show you the scale in ship versus RPG. And we'll be able to kind of share that with you, because we don't think there's going to be a lot of confusion, Scott, but one of the worries that we have is people are going to see these things and they're like, oh, that's just a gelatinous cube. Well, actually, that's not a gelatinous cube. That's a giant gelatinous cube. And a giant gelatinous cube is much, much larger, in scale and scope. You can imagine that. Look at the giant gelatinous cube, probably is about this, maybe a little bit smaller than the Astral Dreadnought. But again, it goes back to in the scale of this, it'll be very clear that ships can get caught in gelatinous cube, not just people, right? So you can kind of see some of the really cool effects that we're doing on some of the ship scales. And then yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, one of the things for retailers and for sales to know is that the ship scale really is useful for representing ship battles or big conflicts in space, chase scenes, whatever. It's not intended, you're not going to put this hammerhead down on the table to chase around a couple of orcs or something like that.
No, exactly.
They are intended for representing space battles. So yeah, that's a great addition to the line for sure.
Yeah. The good thing is this is a new category for us. Is not only are we going to be able to do this in space, but you're going to be able to do this because a space galleon is a space galleon. It's in space, but you can also reference this to be macro battles on planets or on planetoids or on asteroids, right? So you're going to be able to, like, we're going to have a whole line of these, but also think of this as a way that you can actually get macro battles of like towers or it's just a different scale. Because if I was to make say a wizard's tower, like something that was thin and 400 feet tall, I could make that as an RPG accessory. It would cost probably in the multiple, $500 to $700. If I do it in ship scale, I can probably do it for $50. And so what it enables you to do is to have the battles you want and the excitement in the kind of table play that excites I would say the players, but at a scale that's more macro, because you don't need to, if you see a tower from far away, you can put the tower up as maybe your flying ship comes up into it. But then you take that and you have another kind of more miniature scale and a more macro scale. It just allows a different type of play that I think my table has been asking for. Right, as we get up in level and as we play, people want flying ships. This just enables both a ship on water, ship in the air, or wherever you want. Or in this case, you can see the Welcome to Wildspace as an ancient gold dragon, but it's just going to be fun across the board. These are the first sets that are coming out in the ship scale, but you can imagine there's going to be quite a bit more coming down this way.
And Patrick, I'm not sure we mentioned, but there are official rules for ship combat. Ship scale combat in the book that these sets are intended to go with.
No, that's a good point. That's a good point.
The closest comparison is probably D&D vehicle combat.
Correct.
So not overly complex.
Yeah, not overly complex. And so each ship will have a set number of weapons and artillery on the actual ship that the D&D rules will actually have. There'll be maneuverability. There'll be a lot of different things as part of this that are going to be part of the kind of Spelljammer Adventures in Space kind of book set that you'll buy in the kind of when WotC releases in August. All right. Last but not least, we're going to have some game accessories where we're going to introduce 4 kind of ship scale, as well as anything you want, 2 battle mats. One is a wild space battle mat, as the other one is an astral sea battle mat, which is going to be a 3x3 battle mat that'll be it'll be in neoprene. And so it'll be very kind of nice, clean battle mat that gets at kind of helping you out either in ship scale or in miniatures RPG scale. In miniature RPG scale, 1 inch equals 5 feet. In ship scale, 1 inch will equal 100 feet. So if you think about just the kind of difference in scale, it'll be very easy for you to play along those lines. All right. That's all I have for Spelljammer. I'm going to go through. There's some things that are coming up that I think I want to make sure that Scott, as well as your sales folks, as well as the retailers. First and foremost, we introduced this thing called Super Boosters with Fizzbins coming out. Fizzbins is probably is planned to come out in the kind of May-June timeline. And now, what is Fizzbins? Well, it's miniatures for the Fizzbins Treasury of Dragons book that came out from Wizards of the Coast last year. And it contains a lot of cool dragons, lots and lots of dragons. But one thing that it also contains is this super booster. And one of the things that I want to very clearly talk about is we sell product by the brick. And with this, the brick will cost $200. And that's a little bit more than our usual bricks, right? Our usual bricks cost $159.99, not $199.99. And the reason for that is this super booster. Now, oftentimes, I think one of the number one things that retailers are going to ask you and us is how much is the MSRP for each one of these boosters? Well, I want to call out that the MSRP for the huge booster should continue to be $19.99. The MSRP for the super booster, which will contain 1 huge rare, should be $39.99. So if you think about it, 6 times 20 is 120, and 2 times 40 is 80. That equals $200, which is the price of this set. I just wanted to make sure that people understood what the costs were these and why the costs were for these. And I think that'll be something that, Scott, do you only sell by the brick? I'm assuming you do.
Yes, retailers purchase from us by the brick. So
yeah,
in this case, we're familiar with, we've detailed all this out on our website so that everybody looking at it knows there's a distinction between the 6 smaller regular boosters and then the 2 larger ones.
Perfect. It's a question I know we're going to get asked, and this is a kind of test. We want to try to switch up some things in some of our bricks and boosters, and if this does well, then we're going to do this for some of the other sets that kind of give you a randomized kind of really cool huge creature for less than $60, $70, $80, which we've been charging these days. Additionally, I want to talk about what's coming out in August, which is Mordenkainen Presents Monsters of the Multiverse. We're super excited about this. This is Wizards of the Coast released as part of a kind of 3-book set, a new book called Monsters of the Multiverse. The 3-1 came out, I believe it came out last year, Scott, and then they're releasing the standalone book, I believe, in the kind of June timeframe.
Yeah, they released the gift set actually in January of this year.
Yeah, January this year. Yeah,
and then the Mordenkainen's book on its own with the standard cover is supposed to be releasing in, I think it's May.
May, okay,
if I remember correctly.
So this is a monster to support that set, and we took a lot of the ones we didn't do in the one of the, because we actually had a set, I would say maybe 3.5 years ago, that had a lot of the monsters from Volo's and Mordenkainen's. This just continues to flesh out those monsters, so you can kind of see cranium rats, some dinosaurs, right? A lovely, a lovely creature that you can see through. I mean, it's just so many amazing things, right? And again, it goes back to, here's what they look like, in a picture. There's a dolphin delighter there, right? There's just a lot of, there's a fire newt. You can see a fire newt that's being that actually is a Narzagon effect that you can actually take the rider off as well. So there's lots and lots of cool things. Additionally, we had to do the Neophelid, and it is quite large. You can kind of see here on the neck size on it's a 200 millimeter base, and that 200 millimeter, that is on 200 millimeters. And you can kind of see the threat ring of 100 millimeters underneath the actual Neophelid. It's a really, really massive set, and we're super excited about that. And then additionally, go ahead. Sorry, you have a question?
Sorry. Oh yeah, I'm really excited about Dragonlance, but I have to ask this question. On the Mordenkainen's Monsters of the Multiverse, how many creatures are in, or how many models are in that set?
Again, 45 plus the Neophelid, so there'll be a total of 46.
And then if I can ask you on Fizban's, pretty much the same?
Yeah, Fizban's will be 45. The difference is that the way that Fizban's is constructed is those super boosters. There's 8. There are 8. There are 7 huge booster randomized, right, to fill kind of that slot, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. So you in the package or in the booster brick, you get 2 huge boosters.
Yep.
Which will have one of 7 of the
Correct.
large or the huge.
Correct. You're guaranteed one of those huge, those very large huge, because they're not just huge; they're kind of larger huges.
And those larger huge ones are not one of the huge ones that you could get in the regular.
Correct. Correct. They are not. They are not part of the actual booster. So the super boosters are definitely worth the $40 MSRP, and the smaller ones will have just jam-packed full of dragons. And what I didn't talk about is the retail exclusive. Of course, on these, we've already talked about this. So I didn't mention the retail exclusive on both of these, but again, the retail exclusive on the Fizban's is the 2 Wormlings, and the retail exclusive on the Mordenkainen, this one. To tell you the truth, it's funny, like, oh, you know what? It's a 2. I think it's an Invoker and an Illusionist. I can't remember.
It's a Conjurer and Abjurer.
A Conjurer and Abjurer. Thank you. So what the actual book had, it had a bunch of wizard subclasses, and we were able to actually just do all of those as part of our promos, which we're really excited about.
Awesome.
Yeah. Again, we love the retailer exclusives. I know a lot of your retailers do as well, and the consumers love it. And guess what? It brings people into stores, which is what we're trying to do. All right. Let me go to Dragonlance, and I'm going to pass this over to the Onslaught team. But Wizards of the Coast mentioned Dragonlance. I wish I could give you more. I can tell you there's going to be 2 starters. There's going to be 2 premiums. There's going to be a 45 set, a 45 miniature set full of lovely Dragonlance things. I wish I could show you the art and talk about it, but I can't. And then there'll of course be a retail exclusive, and I can tell you the retail exclusive is just amazing. I always want to save the best miniatures in the set for the retail exclusive, but you will love it. If you loved the Strahd Mini, you're gonna love in the Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, you're gonna love the retail exclusive for this. So I can't, there's more details to come on Dragonlance, but I can tell you we're super excited. The planned release for Dragonlance is for us January. I know that Wizards of the Coast mentions the end of 22 for Dragonlance. We are definitely probably going to try to hit January. We're a little bit late on the book just because there's just a lot of moving pieces with what's going on in the global economy.
Yeah,
and logistics. All right. Any last questions, Scott, before I hand it over to the Onslaught team?
Well, unfortunately, none that you would be able to answer at this point.
All right. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to say goodbye. So everyone, thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you, Patrick.
Thanks, Patrick.
Bye.
Thanks, Patrick. Okay, so Scott, we good to segue into Onslaught then?
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, I know we're maybe a little tight on time in terms of the hour. Is it okay if we go over a little bit? John, Alex, you guys okay?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's fine by me.
Yeah,
Okay.
fine for me as well.
All right, great. So then we won't rush it. So I think, well, first of all, my name is Will Frank. For those who don't know me, I'm the manager of trade marketing and communications at WizKids. So many of you have probably seen me on presentations before or at shows. And I'm lucky to be joined by John Schaefer and Alex Davey, who are producers on Onslaught, which is our brand new upcoming D&D miniatures game, which we're very excited about. It was just announced to the public at D&D Direct last Thursday, alongside Spelljammer, and of course some other great stuff. So I think maybe the best way to start is, before we jump into the slides, let me switch to my overhead camera and give a little preview of the preview. And by that, I mean the white box preview kits that we're going to have coming ahead of the full launch of Onslaught. So we haven't figured out exactly how we're going to be distributing those yet, but the goal is to, within the next few months, start to roll those out to your team, Scott, and also retail as well. It's a nice little way, obviously not final components, not even full components. We have a 2-on-2 setup here rather than the 5x5 of the full game, but it's a nice way to get a little feel for the game. So I just want to take a couple minutes to give you a quick look. So I think my camera's blurred. Okay, that's better. So Onslaught is like I said, brand new D&D tabletop skirmish miniatures game. So really we're launching with a head-to-head competitive skirmish game. Obviously, this system is going to be ripe for other things down the line, but we're starting there. It's a round-based combat system, so you can see there are initiatives that will be assigned to each player character, as well as monsters that will be game controlled and moving around the board, depending on the scenario. Objectives and other board conditions will also depend on the scenario. But really, the game flows through the combat cards, the character cards rather. And I'm going to hold up an example quickly to show you. So you can see, and again, this is not final, but it's a dual layered board or dual layered card that gives all your character information. So you have the name, the role or class, you have the basic statistics, including the speed, which determines movement range, the armor class, and the health, which will tick down. And certain stats may be affected as you become damaged and bloodied. You can see it turns to red there. But you can see your standard attacks up here. In this case, Grabbleshanks the Ranger has both a ranged and melee attack, a critical bonus, which will be different depending on the role. You have experience, so you can level up and unlock new abilities for your character, active abilities, and then reaction abilities. And you'll see lots of really cool and well-known D&D abilities. You know, this warlock has Hellish Rebuke. You'll see Fireball, of course, Opportunity Attack like you see here. So there's a lot of really nice D&D flavor that will be familiar to people who play and love the game. On your turn, you'll have you'll typically have a standard action, a move action, and then a bonus action. And then you can do any number of free actions. And I'll hold this up again so you can see kind of the symbology that we've used here, if I can get it to focus. So this attack is a standard attack or standard action to use the dagger for an attack. You will be doing physical damage, target one enemy, range 1, +5 to hit. You'll be rolling d20s against your target's armor class, and then you'll do 2 damage if you do hit. So that's kind of a brief rundown of the game, and we can segue into the slides, because I think what we really want to talk about today is what's coming in the core set, and then our plans for post-release, both content and organized play, which both are going to be very robust, and we're excited to roll that out. And that's why it's great to have John and Alex here. So Scott, before I transition away, any questions on just kind of this little brief demo?
One thing, one question I have, just as someone who's curious about the gameplay and how the game works. It looked like on the character card that there wasn't anything specific to whether that character is a dwarf or an elf or a human. Is that correct? And is that an added component that would be like on a card or something like that? Or is that just not considered as part of the game at this point?
Yeah, John, you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So we kind of left a lot of the specific races for the characters off of the actual cards themselves. I think that will also kind of lend itself, if people really wanted to substitute, if you really wanted to say use a gnome in place of a goblin, or you want to do an elf instead of a human, you're able to do that by proxying in other miniatures. What we do want to make sure that we do is provide people a very kind of complete and thorough list of miniatures that WizKids creates and makes that people can utilize in their games and organize play events, etc. If they want to kind of substitute their own, if they wanted to use miniatures from the Frameworks line or the Nolzur's line and paint their own party, that's completely something that we want to support and allow people to do. And I think part of that is that, a lot of the racial traits that are currently in D&D are kind of left off of a lot of these characters. Like, we want to still have really evocative, cool character designs and have like really great miniatures that correspond with them and some like really evocative abilities and things, but we didn't really want to steer it into a direction where you had to play a Dragonborn miniature specifically for this character if you didn't want to. You're just allowing a little bit of flexibility and personalization of your set.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a great approach and an awesome way to expand the versatility and utility of the game. That and the personalization factors is huge on this. That's one of the things that I think is most exciting about this title, specifically for our retailers. And along that line, one question I have, maybe this will get covered in discussion or in the slides, but does the core box include miniatures for every creature that's encountered, or is that sort of an upsell opportunity for the retailer?
I think that's an upsell opportunity. So right now there are cards that correspond with the miniatures that go in the game. And some of those cards are champion level cards in which they kind of have their own dial mechanics on there. They have a little bit more things to track, and they're a little bit more complicated. They're usually kind of the boss monsters of the encounters. And there's kind of like lesser minions as well. And the lesser minions really just have like a stat card that references. Those are things like kobolds or gnolls. And what we want to do is we want to, I kind of mentioned this earlier, is we want to use our online website, dndonslaught.com, is like the main hub for us to be able to host additional DLC content, releasing things through OP that will hopefully unlock a lot of the products that are already on the shelves or already in people's collections. If they really love a froghemoth, for example, or they're really excited about bullywugs or anything like that, any of the great monsters that are in D&D, we want to provide an opportunity for people to be able to bring those into the Onslaught game as well. So, and that's something that we're just going to release periodically over time. We'll have kind of special in-store events that will allow people to bring some new miniatures into the game, and then also have some free content available to people, just throughout the year, and keep adding to it.
Great. And then, so those creatures in the game, as it stands right now, would they be represented by tokens then that move around on the board, or are they just not on the board at all?
Well, currently they're not options within the current context of the game. So they're in the core set. There are a set number of scenarios that reference very specific monsters that are in there. We will release additional content over time, additional map packs, other products that will introduce new miniatures in there, and also have some things that will point people to the store shelves as well. So but I think that we're talking about having a token analog to represent those monsters if you don't have the miniatures early on, and then also allow you to purchase the miniatures and utilize those in the game if you wanted to.
Great.
And to jump in and
ahead,
clarify real quick about that. So essentially the core set comes with kobolds, gnolls, an Etten, a troll, and a young black dragon. And all of the scenarios in that core set utilize those miniatures. So you're getting everything that you need to play through the narrative of, you know, delving into this ancient dungeon and confronting these monsters. But as online only products, the way that we've designed the system allows us to provide people with online resources for like print at home, which will point towards specific products like the Saguan monster pack, for example, that WizKids produced. And so you'll be able to go online and find a monster card for those critters, instructions for a scenario, or possibly like a little linked mini campaign with 3 scenarios for how you incorporate those. It'll point you to specific components in the core set. So it'll say, you know, use map site B, use these monsters that you've purchased separately, and, you know, utilize your characters as you normally would. And then one other really cool aspect of the game is that the looting system, which of course, as we all know, is a big part of D&D, is very representational. So the core set comes with 20 loot tokens that have, you know, swords and potions and powders, but they don't have specific instructions as to what those loot tokens do. They just, per scenario, send you to specific item cards. So if you want to expand the opportunities to get like new loot and new treasure, something that's online can simply provide you with, again, those print and play cards that as you play this new scenario, you know, what would formerly have been, you know, a masterwork sword is now Sword of Goblin Slaying or something like that. So it's a very flexible core system right in that core set that lets us kind of play around with different configurations and allows people to get a lot of extra value from that product through online resources.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So it allows the player to just continue to play the game and get more invested in it without it getting stale.
Yeah, exactly that. And from a business perspective and a retailer perspective, we're hoping that the, you know, Onslaught enthusiasts out there will start exploring the rest of the Nolzur's line, the rest of our pre-painted line. And by pointing them towards those products, we're hoping to give them extra value, but also, you know, drive sales for our retailers and for the company as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really big component of it that we want to make sure that the retailer is invested in, is knowing that this opens up the wall of miniatures that's behind you to a larger audience. So fantastic work on that.
Yeah, exactly. And one final note on this whole thing is that we, as we go forward, would like to start including some of those extra cards physically into some of our expansion products as well. So when you buy an expansion product, you'll get enough miniatures to play the core campaign, but you may have an optional bonus campaign included with that physical product that gives you, you know, tokens if you like, but also sort of encourages you to go out and go for the full experience by picking up specific, highly targeted monster packs too, because that's the other thing. This is going to be done in a very thoughtful way, pointing people towards new releases and towards releases that we know are in stock and plentiful, rather than things that people can't get their hands on. So it's going to be very contemporaneous with our overall product line.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay, Will, you can show your slides now.
Are they coming up okay?
Oh yeah, we can
the
see
first
it.
one, yeah.
Title slide for a bit, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll start clicking through some of the stuff we've already covered. so we don't have to linger too long. If I can get them to advance. Okay, so I mean, again, we took a look at the preview kit. That paper map obviously is not representative of what will come in the actual game. So nice large cardboard game board, double-sided for different maps. So you can see obviously the player characters, their parties will be battling it out, but then depending on the scenario, there'll be different objectives, different map situations, and then different monsters. Of course, you can see that big old Etten right in the middle there.
Yeah, one thing I really like about the scenarios in the core game is that they're all kind of like sequential and they're kind of linked. There's a little bit of cause and effect from each one, so you can play them in order, and then what happened in that previous scenario is going to kind of affect the outcome or the setup, or kind of who goes first and other things in subsequent scenarios. So it's kind of a cool little narrative that chases through the core set scenarios, and then there are also match play scenarios in there as well for competitive kind of head-to-head games, things of that sort. So I think there's tons of opportunities when you have two adventuring parties battling one another, and you're throwing in all these other monsters and these other elements into the mix, that really kind of diversifies how the game plays, on top of loot that you can get for your characters, and also they can level up over the course of the game as well, which just adds more to the diversity in the gameplay. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, so like John is saying, the core set will include 21 miniatures, all pre-painted, all brand new sculpts. And that will include the monsters that Alex kind of ran through a couple minutes ago, including the Etten, the young black dragon. But it'll also include 6 miniatures for each of the 2 factions that are going to be launching with the core set, which are the Harpers and the Zhentarim. So from those 6, for each game, you will select a party of 5 to take into the scenario to battle it out. And so in the core set, you'll be selecting 5 from a pool of 6, but we're going to be post core set launch, delivering a monthly cadence of releases that will expand the options for the existing factions, as well as launching new factions. And so then there's going to be a lot of variability, some team building. I'm sure certain metas will develop competitively. So it's going to be great fun. And the core set, of course, is a great package, and we'll take a closer look at that. But there's a lot more coming, and we'll talk about that too. But like John said, so you'll have the rule book, of course, and you'll have a scenario guide, which will include a campaign of scenarios that culminates in an encounter, well, multiple encounters, because it wouldn't take just one, with that young black dragon. And you will be, I see Scott Morris is waiting, we'll let him in. So you'll be from scenario to scenario, as you play through, you'll be carrying over experience, carrying over loot that you gain. And so it's a really nice sort of progression, both narratively and building up your team. And then, like John said, there are sort of replayable competitive scenarios. There's basically, John, correct me if I'm wrong, a death match, a capture the flag, and a control point type scenario.
Yeah, 6 in total, I believe. Isn't that right, Alex? And then we plan on doing a lot more. Whenever we do new OP kits, it gives us the opportunity to do some fun additional scenarios with additional components that people can get as prizes. We're really thinking ahead to make sure that people have like a good variety of scenarios and tactical setups that they can play through.
Yeah, so the core set is actually quite robust. There's 7 campaign scenarios, including a very in-depth learning scenario that takes you through all of the core rules of the game. And then there are, in the scenario guide, there are also 3 competitive scenarios that are geared much more towards that sort of tournament scene. So I believe there's 10 total scenarios, and we certainly plan to have more than those 3 competitive scenarios come out alongside the tournament rules. So I think our target is an initial drop of 6 tournament scenarios for organized play and competitive play. But we're also thinking about, updating and introducing new ones every year to keep the meta fresh and to keep things interesting. So that's something that we can easily provide online. And the expectation is that everybody will have a core set from which to draw, so that, and there's enough variety in that core set to create a lot of different missions for people to run through.
Yep, so we talked a little bit about the release plan, and we'll go through that in more detail in a minute or two, as well as the organized play plan. We have both narrative organized play and more competitive tournament style stuff, store support kits. So a whole plan that we'll sort of sketch out for you in a minute. But here's the core set. Here's the box shot. We don't have we haven't honed in on a specific release date yet. Will be maybe by the time you're watching this, we will have announced a release window, but we're still figuring that out. And really that's going to be driven by our post-launch plans. We want to be sure that we're launching at the right time, both for the organized play that's going to roll out after the core set, as well as, like I said, that monthly cadence of releases to make sure we have a steady stream of content when the game launches. So again, coming very soon, but we can't share at the moment.
Well, in terms of adjusting that release date, and this, again, like you said, it might be a moot point by the time this goes out, but are we looking at a delay of possibly months or more like days, weeks?
Months. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So most likely at this point, there will be additional opportunity to place orders. We're not necessarily locked into the timeline that we had originally set.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so we just had a couple slides here detailing some of the components that you get in the core set. Again, it's a full big box, board game experience, miniature game experience that you'd expect from us. And again, 21 pre-painted miniatures that are all new, all exclusive to this box for at least the first year. So if you're familiar with the D&D Adventure System board games that we've done, kind of a similar format, and we expect a similar appeal to a certain segment of customers who, many people love to pick up those sets specifically for the miniatures, which were often exclusive to those boxes or timed exclusive to those boxes. Of course, all the cards and chits and bits. We already looked at the character cards. Again, they're not final ones in the preview set, so we can kind of click through some of this. You can see this is sort of the under the hood with the different dials. Certain larger monster cards will have dual layer cards with dials as well.
Yeah, that's a champion card example there, kind of the one that I mentioned before for the larger miniatures.
Yeah, and those function within scenarios as kind of boss critters. So they're a big component of the strategy. And when one of these shows up, you know that it's going to factor heavily into the fight and be a real challenge for both parties to try to deal with.
One thing I like about that this scenario too is that even though you might have two scenarios that involve the troll, their behavior is different for each scenario, which is often governed by the scenario rules. They kind of do different things depending on what the theme of the scenario is. So it's even though you're playing a scenario with a troll, you're not going to have the same experience from one scenario to the next. Yeah,
and Alex, I think the troll might object to being called a critter.
He might, and you don't want to make him mad. He's scary.
Right. So then you can see this is one side of the double-sided game board that will come in the core set. Kind of a cool, almost isometric view. John, I know one thing that you've talked about is that you guys try to get it, make it obviously a nice artistic piece, but also make it very readable in terms of which spaces are obstacles, which spaces can be occupied by characters and so on. Mm-hmm. And then here's the reverse.
And one thing that's nice about these maps too is that there are a number of small scenery elements, things like doors and walls, other things that are made out of punch board that you layer over top of this map that can close off certain aspects of the map into concealed walls that you have to find a key to actually access. There's spawning points and trigger plates and other elements that you put on top of the map to diversify the layout of it. So even though the map has two sides, the scenarios are very diverse in their setup because you add all these other scenery elements on top of the map to change the layout and the objectives of the game.
And of course, more maps coming both in terms of downloadable content as well as boxed paid content. And then so here are the faction minis. So you can see 6 each for the Harpers and the Zentrum. And then the monsters, including some larger critters.
Indeed.
And then we talked about this a little bit a couple minutes ago, but I think it's worth reiterating. And John, maybe you want to just give a quick pitch on how the integration of other miniatures is going to work?
Yeah. So it's like we mentioned before, we don't really want to just completely open the floodgates and cause a lot of confusion as far as, when you sit down to play a game and you look across the table and seeing what your opponent has, trying to understand what's going on and what characters are represented by what. So what we're doing is we're looking at our available products, things that are really relevant and appropriate to stand in as proxies, and offering kind of a curated list of other options available to you. And those will be pre-painted options. We're going to have some Nolzur's things. We'll certainly have some Frameworks miniatures in there for those people that really like to hobby and paint their miniatures as well. So I think that, you know, what we really want to do is open it up enough. So if somebody really wanted to do something thematic and fun, like say, you wanted to take your Zentrum and you wanted to theme them around the Underdark, for example, you could find Underdark appropriate miniatures that are in there, and then we can, you know, provide a list of options available to you, and you can bring those in and be able to play with those as well. So that's largely the gist of it. It's open-ended enough to allow people to be creative, but we still want to give a little bit of direction, kind of narrow the focus, so it doesn't create any sort of confusion as far as what's playable and what's not.
Yeah, but I mean, of course, we want to be clear that there's a really nice value proposition here, both for stores as well as for consumers who might be able to, you know, if they've already invested in a collection of miniatures, they might be able to use some of their favorite minis in this cool new game. And then, of course, stores are going to unlock some additional value of product that they may well already be carrying. So we really see it as a win-win-win, and we're excited to kind of, as you know, John was detailing, evolve this as we're going forward. And continue to unlock, you know, intelligently and methodically a nice portion of miniatures for integration. Scott, you have any questions on this?
I was just going to add that I think one of the really great aspects of this is the customizability of it. Allows people to, like you said, theme their crews, theme their design for the miniatures, and then also take those themes back into the Dungeons and Dragons game if they so wish, and kind of play out other stories with the same characters and see how they like it, and make changes to it. Just the flexibility. I think customization is a huge part of the hobby that's largely been missing on a lot of the board game side of things, and even in a lot of miniatures games, there's just not a lot of flexibility. And I think this game has everything that I would look for in a game. Having not played it at this point, you know, I can say that, but I haven't played it. But in terms of the flexibility and the ability to customize it, make it my own, pimp it out is another term that people use for what they're doing. But I think it's a fantastic model, and I'm excited to see how the game plays out myself.
Great. Yeah, I'm excited about that too. I'm certainly, you know, I love painting miniatures. I'm really into the hobby stuff, and I'm currently looking through the Frameworks line and finding analogs for all the Zentrum figures, and figuring out and selecting, you know, the group of options I'll have available to me. So I guess one thing that we should maybe speak a little bit on is just the current role system and how it's set up. Alex, do you want to speak on that a little bit about how there's, you know, the set number of roles that you have available to you, and how many we plan on making, and just the overall variety of different characters you can bring.
And I'll step ahead to the content calendar. Might be a good segue into talking about that.
Sure.
Okay,
Sounds good.
Right next, yeah.
Yeah. So one of my favorite things about the system is how easy it is to build a list, and the way that that's integrated into scenarios. So in Dungeons and Dragons Onslaught, there are 6 distinct roles, and each character will fall into one of these roles. And those roles are things like Vanguard, which is your tanky, hard to kill, protective character. Yep. So that's Lightning Dancer from the Harpers. So he's got a really high armor class, and he's got the ability to intercept enemy fighters, tie them up in combat. He's got the best opportunity attack in the game. So if you try to disengage with him, he'll punish you with a powerful attack. Other roles include things like range damage, someone who's just really good at putting out a lot of damage from a distance. So that's another Harper character, Gravelshank. So he's a goblin ranger archer. And the really cool thing about the role system is it doesn't necessarily correspond one-to-one with class, because the D&D class system, within each class, there's a lot of wonderful subclasses and different ways that you can build your character. So a ranger might be a range damage character, but a different sort of ranger might be a Vanguard tank, or a melee damage kind of character if you're doing the 2-weapon style. Other roles include tactician, which manipulate either the initiative system or elements on the game board to give you a tactical advantage. Melee damage, of course. And so the factions will have from the get-go access to one character from each of these roles. And when you see what scenario you're going to play, that's when you choose which of your 5 characters to pick. So if there's a scenario where a slow vanguard is not going to be as useful as a quick tactician character, like a bard who can go fast and pick up loot and that kind of thing, you may leave your vanguard aside. As the releases continue, here in month 5, you can see that we have planned Harper's and Zentarum expansion packs. Those expansion packs will introduce new characters that will duplicate those roles. So eventually each faction will have a total of, I think I want to say 14 different character choices. So you'll have double or even triple options for each of those roles. And you'll be able to choose your party per scenario with a great deal of specificity, and just figure out which characters you like to play and what your play style is. Mm-hmm. And that's going to vary a lot from faction to faction as well. The Red Wizards, for example, raise the dead. They have a lot of necromancy abilities. So their vanguard may be physically a lot weaker, but may be capable of creating and buffing skeletons to act in that tank role. So there's a lot of design space and flexibility within these roles. And a lot of thought has been put into what each faction does differently from the other factions to keep them sort of new and fresh. The many arrows are very melee focused, but in order to get to grips with faster, slipperier, more ranged combat factions, they have a lot of abilities to slow down or pin the enemy in place through some of their special effects. So that each faction should play very differently, and there are a lot of factions planned for the game. So we anticipate a really simple but very diverse and interesting meta when it comes to building your teams and picking your characters for each scenario.
Oh yeah, one other note too is that we're also introducing sellswords into the game as well, which are essentially mercenary characters available for all factions. So that adds even more available options for all of the existing factions just by releasing these neutral ones as well.
Yeah, each faction will be able to include one mercenary in their squad. So that's going to give you even more options. And then the sellswords will eventually be a playable faction in their own right, where they can bring, you can bring all sellswords if that's what you're really into.
Interesting.
Yeah, and
when you talk about the difference between class and role, in terms of role being an Onslaught term and class being a Dungeons and Dragons term, would you say that some of the variability in the role assignments or the character types that will fit in under a role will come from different classes? So a barbarian might be a good tank, a ranger might end up being a good tank or a vanguard, or a fighter can be a tank as well. But it's sort of like give you options on which model you're picking and which figure you like, and give you a really additional flexibility in how you build those squads.
Yeah, and so the classes don't have any in-game application, right? There's no rules associated with being a wizard versus being a barbarian. But why they're on the card and why they're a part of it is because the roles will correspond to, in a lot of cases, iconic ways to build specific characters. So to use Ranger as an example, so the Harpers have access to Grabbleshanks, who is an archer character. He fulfills the ranged damage role because that's his skill. He's very good at picking people off from a distance. However, the Many Arrows faction pack includes a ranger character who is a hybrid. It's a hybrid character. That's one of the roles, which is sort of, that's the 6th role and very in-betweeny. And that character has hand axes that can be thrown. So that character is kind of a mix between a melee and a range damage character. and is very flexible. And I'm sure there'll be, you know, more rangers down the line that fulfill all of those different roles as well. Same with every class. Every class is probably going to show up probably in all 6 roles at some point, just given the different ways that you can build a wizard or a warlock or what have you. You know, a summoning warlock is much different from a spellblade type of warlock who's going to be getting up there and doing a lot of melee, you know, DPS kind of damage. So you really see the breadth of what the different classes in D&D can be, because they can each show up in very different configurations based on the specific character and what the role they're fulfilling is. And then that extends to what spells and abilities they have too. Each character has basically 2 signature cooldown abilities that correspond to that, you know, class or subclasses specific things. Like the Bedlam, the warlock has Hellish Rebuke, which allows him to do, you know, to do damage back to somebody as he receives damage. There's a Red Wizard's warlock though that's much more focused on summoning up a Hound of Ill Omen and, you know, creating a distraction on the board. So that's a really cool aspect of the game as well.
Yeah, I can see the class system in Onslaught also helping guide the consumer in the model selection they make, or the type of build that they come up with, what the look and feel of the characters are, some of the lore that they make up in their head about who these people are and why they're doing this, and sort of they're building their favorite group from that. So
one other thing to mention that I want to get out there before I forget. When you build a party of 5, each character has to have a different role. So there's some inherent balance in that you can't just take all range damage characters and try to nail your opponent from across the board. You have to take a good mix, and you know, you'll have different options within each role, but that helps keep the list building really simple. There's no points or upgrade cards or anything like that. It's just look at the scenario and choose 5 characters, and each character has to have a different role. So that keeps things very easy, but it keeps the tactics within each mission instead of in the list building stage for the most part.
Right.
And then, yeah, so to give you some specifics on the physical releases that are going to support this expansion, you can kind of see we've put up a content calendar on the screen here. And so if you think about a season of Onslaught that sort of kicked off by the core set, you'll have the 2 factions that launch with the core set, which of course each have 6 miniatures, 6 characters that come with them. We'll then be following that up with a cadence of monthly releases to support that season. And so you can see here, month 2 and 3, we'll see new factions launching into the game. And each of those faction packs will contain, again, 6 miniatures. And these are going to be all pre-painted, all new sculpts that are exclusive to the game when they launch. So we have packs of 6 miniatures launching for each of these 2 additional factions. And then the Cell Swords pack is sort of think of it as like mercenaries expansion pack. So it'll be 4 miniatures that can be used with any of the factions. They're basically wild cards that can be mixed and matched as you like. And then from there, so at that point, each faction will have six options, right? And then faction expansion packs like the Harpers and Zentrum that you see in month 5 there, those will each provide 4 new characters for each of those factions. So then once those launch, if you pick those up, then you have 10 options from which to select your party of 5 from, if that makes sense. And in sort of the latter half of the season, we'll again launch 2 4-character expansion packs for each faction, which will bring each faction's total up to that 14 that Alex and John mentioned.
Mm-hmm. And there's another Cell Swords pack coming along in the second half of the year as well. So that will become a fully playable faction and also provide, you know, eight total mercenaries for people to add into their Red Wizards or Many Arrows factions or what have you as well.
So for things like the month 5 expansion packs that are for the Harpers in is it Zentrum? Zentrum. Do those include miniatures as well, or is it only new character cards and
you get four new miniatures, again, pre-painted new sculpts.
And 4 new character cards as well as level up cards, because each character also has 2 level up cards which is a special ability that can unlock in the middle of a scenario if they collect enough experience points. And those are tied to individual characters as well, and are often quite powerful.
Great.
And then, of course, certain characters will also have other, additional tokens that their abilities might put on the board and different things. And so all of that content will come with the pack. So you have everything you need when you pick up those packs to play those characters.
There's some encouragement of picking up additional miniature SKUs in there as well, because only the characters come with miniatures, but a number of characters can summon other entities onto the table. So the Red Wizards, for example, can summon both skeletons and a Hound of Ill Omen. And, conveniently enough, we manufacture a wide variety of skeleton miniatures for players to go out and that, customization and improvement. A lot of people are going to want to have actual miniatures to play with that as well. Although they can, of course, legally use tokens if that's what they prefer.
Great.
So just quickly to kind of sum that all up, again, in thinking about a season of Onslaught, the early season will of course see the core set, the two factions that launch there, 2 standalone faction packs that will introduce new factions, so bringing that total for the season to 4, and the Sellswords pack. You'll of course see those factions expand throughout the year. Mid-season, and John and Alex, feel free if any of my information is outdated, please jump in. But mid-season, you'll see new map and monsters enter the game, which will again be a standalone, boxed release, and that'll pick up the story from the core set campaign. And then, of course, continued expansion to factions throughout mid and late season. And of course, there'll be some accessories, and then OP will be wound into there as well. So I have a separate slide for organized play that John or Alex, you want to talk about how our plans are evolving there?
Yeah, sure. Sounds good. So what we want to do is we want to provide kind of like relatively easy to run store kits for the stores. And those could either be run in a single day as a 3 or 4 round tournament for 12 players, or you could actually set it up in such a way so you can run a league and you can have players come back over an extended period of time and play their games. We're including like paperwork and all the other elements and DLC content to facilitate all that, as well as some instructions for the stores, some best practices, some suggestions on actually running these events, because sometimes stores just don't necessarily have the means to actually run these events with their setup. So that kind of describes the general launch kit. Store support kits are, and in those launch kits, there are also exclusive prizes. So we have unique miniatures, foil versions of cards, extra dice, an assortment of different items that we can kind of put in there. Store support kits are similar in their vein, but have a little bit more robust prize package associated with them, largely designed for competitive tournament kind of gameplay. And then the storyline OP events, those are kind of the most ambitious of the lot. They have unique miniatures that nobody's ever seen before, really inviting players to come back over an extended period of time. I think we're thinking about 4 to 6 weeks on regular weekly intervals. We give all the prizes and components to the stores and give them a number of suggestions and options to distribute those, either through single event activities or through participation in a certain number of events, through a checklist, that sort of thing. So we're very excited about diversity in the game. I think that the game engine itself and the system in it allows us to explore a lot of different avenues down the road where we could lean into cooperative play, team-based play. Like there's a lot of different stuff there that I think will provide us a lot of different avenues to go down when it comes to hosting in-store events. So yeah, we're definitely very excited about it. But this is kind of like the general formula that we have: launch kits, store support kits, storyline OP, and then championship events, which are intent for like regional and world play, in which we'll kind of have prize walls and things that people really want to travel to and try to get for themselves.
One other thing to mention, especially about the storyline OP kits, is that we are going to be providing a lot of event-specific exclusive content to try to drive that foot traffic directly to stores, directly to retail stores. That's going to be stuff that you may be able to get that character or monster later down the road in an actual product, but it won't be the same paint job and pose. There'll be an element of exclusivity for that, and it will also be an opportunity for people to get those products way ahead of time. Like, you know, there's a cool multi-part golem idea for the storyline OP there. That will not show up as a retail product until many months after that event is run. So the hope is that's going to get, you know, butts in seats and get people engaging very heavily with your, you know, FLGS and try to create a community around a local store.
Great. And then as far as the store level participation, I'm assuming that happens at the launch kit, the store support kits, and the storyline OP kit, where the championship event would not be necessarily run in a store unless it's a select number of stores. John is talking, but he's muted. So
sorry about that. Yeah, I think that's the intention, is that, you know, the championship events would probably be more regional based. They might be hosted at specific venues or at events, things like Gen Con, other locations like that, or certain showcase stores that have, you know, proven to be able to have the appropriate space and have run successful events in the past. You know, just stores that we can trust to be able to host, you know, 50, 60, you know, plus players.
Absolutely. Awesome.
Any other questions on OP, Scott?
No, I think it was pretty well covered. Exclusive
great.
content. We're looking at exclusive miniatures and stuff as prizes for winning the events or success in the event. Probably the participation prize as well, or a participation element.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the normal pattern, right? So
yeah, we want to get more prizes to more people. I think that, you know, a lot of participation prizes, additional prizes in there for the TO, just to help facilitate running the event. We're trying to make it as friendly as possible for the retailer whenever we can. So just giving them some additional stuff and some general guidance on kind of running these sorts of events to hopefully make it, you know, real smooth.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think it's a great and very exciting program. Looking forward to seeing it roll out and participate in it myself.
Cool.
Yeah, great. So then I think we only have a couple more quick topics, which I'll run through. We mentioned this earlier, but dngonslaught.com is live now. It's live as of D&D Direct. So of course it'll be updated, and we'll be adding much more to it as we approach launch and after launch, but it's live now. And I want to call out specifically that if you scroll down below where this screenshot is from, at the bottom of the page, there is a link to retailer assets, and that'll take you to posters that you can download and print, as well as social media assets of various sizes to fit different platforms, and including 1920 by 1080 images that can be kind of put up on monitors around stores. So some nice options there. And again, we'll be adding a lot more to this, both for stores and players as we approach and post launch as well. Okay, well, I actually forgot I had a screenshot of that. So there are some of the assets. And then I mentioned the preview kits earlier. As we took a quick look at one with the overhead cam, but these are going to be, again, something that we're figuring out how to deploy it over the next few months. So stay tuned for details on that. But it's a great way just to get a little flavor for the game. And, you know, we'd love to get them out to your sales team, Scott, as well as retailers, so that their customers can start trying out the game. So more to come there.
Excellent. Looking forward to it.
And then just very quickly on our marketing plans, obviously this is a major launch for us. We're really excited about it. So you can expect a full court marketing push on this, you know, just a sample list of outlets that we'll be working with there. We're lining up a cover for GTM. And then of course, influencers as well. We have some cool plans that are going to be developing there. And that's it. So John, Alex, anything else that you want to cover? Scott, any additional questions?
Nothing for me. I think that we talked a lot about all this stuff for sure. But yeah, if there are any general questions, certainly we can answer any of them if anybody has any.
Excellent. Yeah, no, I think I have all my questions answered, so I'm excited about it. I'm excited about the Spelljammer product coming, and Onslaught's going to be awesome. And then eventually we'll be able to talk about Dragonlance, and I'll get all excited again.
Yeah, me too. Excited for that.
We have some really cool stuff coming in that set. Like Patrick was talking about, kind of continuing to experiment with miniatures, little tweaks to the formula, and there'll be some riders and different things that'll bring some cool new elements there. But thanks, Scott. We really appreciate you having us on, and you told us we didn't have a hard stop, so we took the time. So thanks for bearing with us here.
Hey, you know what? It's totally worth it to get all that additional information and do a deeper dive onto it. So I'm happy to take that longer time. And
Good.
If our retail friends want to check out at any point along the way, they're welcome to do it, but they'll miss out on a lot of good information. So.
All right, great.
Well, I'll
just close by saying that we are going to be trickling out gameplay articles and sneak peeks and all kinds of more specific, crunchier information to try to give players a sense of how the game will actually play out on the tabletop in the months to come.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to do it, and make sure that everybody's aware of the quality of the gameplay as well as the components and everything else going in. I mean, WizKids already has a great reputation for the quality of the components going into these games. It's just a matter of the question about the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not it plays well. So
yeah, I think we've got a real winner here. So I'm excited to get into people's hands.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to trying it out. So send that kid over whenever you can.
We will.
We'll do.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for your time. Really appreciate you being here. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your day and extending that time so that we could cover everything in detail. So I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Scott. It was fun.
Retail partners, thank you once again for being a part of this webinar series. We can't do it without you. So we want to make sure that you're up to date on all the latest content coming out from us on the board game side, as well as on our gaming specialty products and supplies. So please like and subscribe this video so that you're up to date when a new video releases. If you have any questions about anything that was discussed on the webinar today, please feel free to contact myself or Will Frank through the emails that will be shown on the screen here shortly. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.